Welcome back to Small Business Diaries, the podcast by Capsule. I'm your head of content, John Davis. I'm here again, and I'm joined once again by Steve Ledgerwood. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Doing really well, thank you very much. This week's been quite a interesting guest we've had on the podcast, haven't we, Steve?
Wow, great. It was really had some really good conversation. It was an exciting and fun time for sure.
But no, we had Morgan Ingram, and we had a very interesting conversation with Morgan. It was probably one of the best conversations I've had on the podcast so far, and just a little bit of background about Morgan actually as well. So he is the owner and founder of an organization called AMP Group. They're a B2B marketing and sales consultancy. He kind of specializes in content. Video is like really big thing, and you can see that all over his LinkedIn. But besides that, he's been in B2B marketing and sales for over a decade. He's worked for a lot of different SaaS companies, and he's also comes from a sports background, which is a theme that we're starting to establish actually over the last few episodes of the podcast, which I've found very interesting to explore. And I know that you come from a sports background as well, Steve. And the last thing is we found out that he's a pretty good big video gamer, which was super interesting.
Yeah, and I also think on top of that, he spoke about his acting part as well. I didn't realize that because you can't see it from his profile, but you can see in the way that he presented himself. Yes, in the session, I think it was very clear that he had been coached in that way.
Definitely. I suppose just reflecting on the conversation then, I mean, my first question for you, Steve, is what did you make of Morgan in general?
I think he's a very determined and intentional individual, and he is very clear on his goals and aspirations. I think that was very clear in in the communications. He obviously has a very specific way of mentally preparing himself to get through things, and he's always much more determined to get to an outcome rather than give up through that process. And you could see it in everything that he does. So everything that he talked about, there was never a I'm not going to do this. It was more of a I'm going to get through this until I see a result. And I found that very interesting. I felt like he's obviously been brought up in a scenario like that, but also I think it also comes from his curiosity, right? It's not just a discipline that he's been brought up with. I think that's also part of it, but also he's always very intrigued about how this can actually work to a result. And I find that super encouraging.
It's really interesting. Going back to the determination piece there, what do you think that if you're going to be successful, running a small business, owning a small business, or driving a small business, do you think that's an essential part, of a makeup of a small business owner, just trying to get things like up and running and operational?
It's interesting because, some people just fall into opportunities and it's not necessarily determination. It's more like, I've got to figure this out. So I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and it naturally flows. Most people who are super successful, who get through the challenges of the phases that you go through in business, are determined on a end result or a goal. And you can see it clearly from, where Morgan stands. He has a huge vision about where he wants to go and he's determined to get there. I think if the determination's not as, it's sure in your personality, it becomes much harder to be able to get through those milestones in a more meaningful and tangible way. So I would say success does come from that. It's not all the time, but I think the majority of cases, people that are at that stage, especially in the early stages of a business, do need to have this motivation to get from a point A to a point B, even through all of the peaks and troughs that come that way.
For sure. I thought I kind of echo a lot of what you just said there when you're speaking about Morgan. But what I was really struck by was just how humble and
Mm.
open Morgan was, as an individual and as a person. And perhaps this is my own misnomers and my own characterization of business owners in my head. but I just felt like sometimes I was just having a conversation very casually, with someone I've known for a little while, which is like credit to him and his personality.
Yeah.
Um, but also as well, like I felt that he was super self-aware of his own limitations, and he actually, what I found is that he just owned those limitations. He recognized those limitations, and instead of like ignoring them and not necessarily doing anything about it, he's put practical steps like in place to deal with them, right? Deal
Mm.
with them in a tangible and meaningful way. So for instance, not to spoil the whole episode, but he's got an enormous team of people that help support him on numerous parts of like him as an individual, whether it's the career coach that he mentioned, whether it's the personal trainer to keep his body sharp, and the acting side of things. It was eye-opening to me that like people that successful don't know, are self-aware enough to know they don't have all the answers, and it's about seeking the right people to help them deliver in the best way possible and utilizing other people's knowledge and expertise to get the result.
I think that was my biggest learning from him in his, in his journey. He hasn't come from coaching and from, learnings to and people helping him from the beginning. It's a relatively recent thing from what he said in his session.
Mm.
And it's because he's obviously come through many things and he's a go-getter. So he wants to succeed. And like he said, one of the things that he struggled with on many occasions is that he doesn't feel like he was good enough or successful enough. So he was always going for things. And I think this last phase or this recent phase is he knows that he needs support and help. So he's humble enough, and probably not just humble enough, more curious to be able to see how things can be done differently, that he's now seeking, coaching and help and guidance in every area of his life. And so, that's a really good encouragement for anyone in business, including myself. It's just help is around, and it's not just necessarily help to get you to a point where you can do better, but it's more sometimes just bouncing ideas or a sounding board on things that you're thinking through that actually it requires just open conversation to try and get more in tune or more in detail with that gets you to a better result. So yeah, I was very, very encouraged with that.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I'd even like go as far to say that like it actually made me stop and think about myself and think about what I want to do and where I want to be. And I think that like definitely in that coaching side of things, like that's something that I would be personally very interested in, doing for sure, because there's gaps I have, in my own experience, not necessarily need to be filled, but encouraged, developed, and improved on. And if a guy like Morgan, with over 150,000 followers is earnest enough to admit that, why can't the rest of us, right?
Yeah, I agree.
One thing I wanted to ask you, another away from learning, Steve, is what was most interesting for you? What really struck a real chord with you in your conversation with Morgan?
I liked his journey. What's most interesting is his journey. Obviously, his own personal journey is one thing, but his business journey is another. He was a video. He did video for people on Facebook, or himself as well. And that turned into followers, and that turned into success, and that led to more content creation. And then it got him into, well, I think I'm good at this, so now I have to choose a topic that I can create content for. So now I'm going to go to sales. And, now he's incredibly, gifted in giving people some really good insights on how to do this in a different way. And so, yeah, I just love that journey. It's, you, you do see people move from customer success or partnerships to sales and vice versa, or some marketers who are amazing at, instinctive selling, they go to that. you don't often find people who are necessarily into video and content creation to actually start talking to salespeople and then being a great salesperson himself. So I think that was the most interesting. It was really exciting to see that.
Yeah, no, that journey was really interesting. But like, I felt that like in addition to that piece was, I guess, his whole take on how sales should and needs to
Yeah.
transform, like in
Yeah.
order for for it to be effective, like going forwards.
But
He
that's
made
a
a
great
really
thing because it's his voice, right? It's the
yeah.
voice that he sees. It's his vision about where he sees the trend going, but he's also showing that in the way that he does things himself. So it's just like it's thought process, trends, and application that created, his understanding about what that is. And there are many different opinions. So he may or may not be right, but he's following it
Well,
in what
that
he
was my
feels is
next
right.
question, right? I've done my background on you, and I know that you worked in sales for an incredibly long time before you decided to become CEO of Capsule. What did you think about that as a salesperson? How did you feel about his effective proclamation that outbound being is dead?
Well, he did clarify that. I won't ruin the surprise, but he did clarify that in what he was saying. And of course, he doesn't think Outbound is dead. Sorry, I've just given it away. And actually, I resonate with what he's saying. I don't think it's necessarily Outbound is dead. It's like Outbound is dead in the way that people used to do it. People need to move with the times. People and humans, they change and evolve, and you have to try and meet them where they're at that point in time. And a lot of the mechanics he's talking about are still the same things. It needs to be relevant. It needs to be unique to an individual. It needs to, all these things, they're all words that we use 10, 20, 30 years ago. We didn't execute on it as much as we need to now because there's a lot more noise out there. Whereas before, 20, 30 years ago, there wasn't, it was new. Now everyone does it. So now you have to be, you know, different from the rest, and it's how much more unique and relevant you can be. So I definitely resonate with what he's saying. But he definitely said that email isn't dead. Just for everyone listening
Yeah,
to that.
no, he ironically said it for the listeners that might have misinterpreted, and I feel like I might have jumped the gun there a little bit of that proclamation. Nonetheless, I think you'll all really enjoy the conversation this week, so I think we should stop talking, and I think we should just get straight into it.
I agree.
Okay, so we're going to do an intro segment anyway, like separately, Steve and I, so we don't need to worry about intro at all. We just go straight into it. So I've been doing some research on you, Morgan, and one of the things that really interested me was a little bit earlier on in your career. You actually did a lot of work in the video games industry and the video game sector. I saw you did some stuff with Mortal Kombat, League of Legends. So I wanted to ask, if you could pick a League of Legends character that represents you, who would it be?
Wait, I already love this podcast. Okay, so the fact that you had this question, like, all right, I'm fired up. So, for context, League of Legends is a online multiplayer battleground type game. It is very toxic and tilting, and it can make you a very angry individual. I don't. That's why I'm more calm and peaceful nowadays because I don't play it anymore. But I love the game, and the I would say I played mid lane. For those listening in, you know what that means. I would say my character would be Oriana, and the reason I pick Oriana is she has a ball that she can move around the entire arena. Now, this is a more complex player to play with because you have to understand the mechanics, and you basically are playing chess with this character. But I'm a big chess player. I'm a big strategic thinker. And so when I think of Oriana, it's exactly me because you have to be strategic. And the way you play, you have to be like 3 steps ahead. And that's how I like to think in business and in my life. So I would pick Oriana. I love this question. I mean, can it go uphill from here? I don't know. Like, but this is a great question.
I mean, I could spend all this session talking about video games, but I don't think our listeners would especially love to talk about video games.
Well, you'd find me sleeping because I'm more Formula One, like football. Like when it comes to Mortal Kombat, I'm nowhere. So yeah.
Hey, shout out to footy. I'm actually going to the European Cup.
Okay.
Oh, the
That's
Euros.
good. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I'm going to
Wow.
the Euros. Going to the Euros. See, Yeah, you weren't ready for that one. So yeah, I'm going.
No, I wasn't at all. And when are you coming so that we can actually see you face to face? That'd be great.
Yes, it will be June 20th is when I land. I'm going to Berlin.
Okay.
So I'll be around that area, and then I'm going to go to London actually for 5 to 6 days as well. So me and my best friend are actually going out for a European trip. So we're excited.
And
Well,
if you're going to the Euros, who are you seeing?
So we're going to see the Netherlands. I think this Netherlands in Poland, I think plays in Berlin.
Right.
I was like, great. And then I'm going to try to sneak over to see Spain and Italy. It's in like, I can't pronounce it, y'all. So if you're German, don't make fun of me. I think it's like Dorschmach. I think is what it's called. But that's probably wrong. So everyone's going to hate me now. All your German listeners have now dropped off. Sorry, I lost you subscribers.
Thanks for alienating the whole plasma base.
My bad, guys. but yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
That's awesome. Cool.
Well, I guess like next question is really like a more real question. Who are you?
Yeah.
Oh man, what? Okay, so can I ask like a layered question? That like just in general, like being like who? What am I like? Where are we?
What does who are mean to you? Like, how would you answer that if we gave you the question?
Yeah, so I would say, in essence, everything work-wise that I believe in is striving for excellence and getting 1% better every single day. So I'm a striver of excellence, just like Kobe Bryant was, rest in peace, because everything that he did, I model work after him. But also I'd say as a son and a friend, a very loyal and passionate person, and sparked with curiosity to always help people solve their problems and in kind get them where they need to go. Ultimately, I believe, why I was brought into this life is that I'm a spark for people. Like if people are like stagnant, they don't really know where to go, they don't really know what to do. I'm the person that could say, hey, like you need to go do this, like just to get them started, right? And get them in the direction. So if I said, who am I would believe it would be those characteristics and those things across the board.
Wow, that's phenomenal. So you glass half full rather than glass half empty.
Yes. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
It's a very altruistic mindset, going into business with that like altruism front and center. It's very interesting.
And just Morgan, just so that we understand, you obviously on the West Coast now, you didn't grow up there. Like, how did you come to be, going on the West Coast, kind of your business venture, what did you grow up doing? Those types of things. Just a quick summary. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah. So I grew up just with a lot of curiosity into a lot of different things. I would probably say a lot of the things that I did would be considered like, I guess in terms geeky or nerdy or whatever, but that was me. So I did chess. I was second chair. I absolutely love playing chess. I still play it from time to time. Also as well, big into video games. I mean, you just heard it at the beginning of this episode. I know that's not what you're here for, but if you want to side chat on video games, I'm all there for it. I also was really big into acting. So I took acting lessons. I was in theater. I did a lot of like main act plays. I still actually do some type of acting today. I dabble in it. I just really love the art of it and things of that nature. But that's like how I grew up. Just a lot of like things in the arts, things of creativity. I've always been that type of person. And then I played basketball growing up as well. So I'm really big into that and watching sport. And then I think ultimately at the end of the day, like when I say curiosity, and the reason I'm saying it a lot is because I always credit my mom for this, and she did a fantastic job. I remember when I was like 5 years old, and I have two younger brothers, but my middle brother, she would always drag us to the library. And at first I did not like going to the library. I didn't like the smell. I didn't like to read. I was like, I don't really care about this. Like, I'd rather go play like a game or something. But I actually grew to love it. She would just say like, hey, like read at least 10 pages a day. And at this point, I still, will read daily or consume some type of content, whether it's YouTube, and always pour into my mind as much as you should pour into your body. I believe that you should be growing and accelerating both. And so for me, like that was the biggest blessing, or one of the biggest blessings that she gave me, was forcing me to read so that I could be educated and have certain conversations. And so I would say I just remain a person of just pure curiosity. And I lead that into like everything that I do.
I have a question there. So that's really interesting. Would you believe that the discipline of what your mom had provided you in just, making sure that you are consistently learning was the reason why your curiosity grew, or is it because you feel like in your personality you are quite a curious person? There's a stemming of discipline versus actually you're naturally curious.
Nature versus nurture, isn't it? Fundamentally.
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe that to a degree, I think natural was there, but to the first point, it expanded because she took me to the library. So we had
You had no option.
yeah, I really had no option. She was like, "This is it," or like, but I mean, she actually played it right. Like she'd be like, "If you don't read, like." It was actually she did it really well. So for me and my brother, like we had like N64, like GameCube, like we had all the systems, right? But she was like, you can't get on these unless you read.
Yeah.
So the more pages that you read, and you actually had to like give a report. Like this is so serious. Like you couldn't like finesse it. She's like, oh, you didn't actually read it. So you had to actually like read, and then like you would get like more time for the games and stuff. So like I don't know, just like correlated in my brain like that way, but I would say it definitely expanded curiosity 100%.
And do you still read now? And if so, what books have you read in the first half of this year that are particularly interesting?
Yeah, so I do still read. I don't read at the volume I used to be transparent. Like I fell into a trap where I read, I think 200 books in a year, but I did it just to say I could do it rather than retaining the information. I'm gonna be super real. Like I was just like, I read 200 books and I'm amazing. Right? I was just like, that's what I wanted to say. But I don't think I actually learned a whole lot from them because I don't think I retained it in the way I don't think I absorbed it as a person. So now I'm a lot slower. I only do like one, maybe two books a month. And I'm like very, very in depth with them. But I actually spend way more time on YouTube more than anything at this point to learn. I don't read again as much, but if I do 1 to 2 a month. So what have I read this year? The book that has changed my mindset on building business or just my whole entire time is Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. It's a great book just to get you an understanding of where you're spending your time, how you need to go about it, what you're doing, and all these things are critical and important. So I would say that's a good one. And then I'm trying to see, actually, I think I have it right here. I've been reading it on my it's super cool. Great. So the 15, if you can see the 15 consciousness of leadership. I was listening to a video yesterday and it just really aligned with me. Like as you're building a company or you're building a department, it's like the great thing about entrepreneurship is that you're the ceiling. The bad thing about entrepreneurship is you're the ceiling.
Yeah.
So if you're growing and you're accelerating as a leader, then people will come with you and you'll grow. But if you decide, whatever, I don't care, like that's what will happen. So I really like that because it forces you to grow. It's on you to that degree. I like that. So that's why I started reading that. So I was like, how can I be a better leader for what we're doing here and communicating the right things?
I have the same philosophy on trying to be competitive not for reading though, but for audiobooks.
Yeah.
I had a goal to try and read as many audiobooks as humanly possible.
Yep.
And what I ended up doing was just putting it in my ears, and it doesn't go from my ears into my brain. I could see like the scroll is saying 6 hours, 4 hours left, 1 hour left, and I'll be like, yes, I've done it. But I didn't even register what was coming into my brain. So it's very interesting how the competitive spirit in me and also in your use cases, is like, I need to do this, but actually, is it meaningful through that process, right? Exactly. It's interesting.
I think we've all done the same because, when I lived in London, when I was starting out in my career, I had a Kindle and like similar to Morgan, I like aimed to get through like maybe 100 books, not quite 200 because that's crazy.
It was mental. I'm not gonna lie. Don't recommend it.
Yeah, but I relate. The information just wasn't getting assimilated, and when I focused more tightly on like what I consumed, the information went in. But I also found as well, like for me, what worked personally for me is like mixing in like some nonfiction with fiction as well, because I think that like in my career, certainly like as a creative, like I need to rest that brain and like kind of lose myself a little bit, and I kind of do that a little bit in my video games as well. Sorry, I can't help it because we talked about it earlier. But like as a creative, like I need to get inspired elsewhere, and it might not necessarily be in a non-fiction business or leadership, but it might be in Discworld or something like that, for instance.
So Morgan, just just in the space of time here, or conscious of time, You are a very successful human in both your personal but also your professional life. Can you just give us a little bit of a summary of what you actually do?
I would, before I go into that, I want to call something out because I think a lot of people probably face this. So, from a third party view, others may view me as successful, but sometimes I don't feel that way. And I want to be very transparent with this because I think some people feel this way. When you feel that way, like I have a coach and we like talk through this, and she's like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, where is this coming from? Typically, it comes from if you are looking to strive for more, right? You're following people who are ahead of you. So you don't think you're successful until you reach that mark. But then that's also false because if you do reach that mark, there's always going to be someone else that you're looking to get to. So then you actually have no gratitude or reflection of success because you're always chasing it and they never think that you are. And to a degree, we talked about that would be pretty miserable life if at the end of your life, you never thought you were successful because you were always chasing. So I encourage people, if you feel like that today, I actually did it recently because it was starting to creep back in, is I just took a notebook or iPhone, whatever you want to do, or Android if you have that. I don't know about that, but at the end of the day, like all I did was I just wrote down everything that I accomplished in 6 months.
Yeah.
And seeing that, I was like, oh wow, this is more than what most people will ever do, right? And so I just, before we go into what I do, I think that's important to call out because some people who are in maybe a position that I am, it's important to do that.
And I actually really want to drill into this a little bit more because I think I suffer a little bit myself, like from not necessarily like I need to do that more. It's great advice. Write down what you've achieved in like 6 to 12 months and then look back. But do you not think that having that characteristic in your makeup, right, is what makes you successful because you're perpetually never satisfied with what you do?
Yes, it is what makes me successful, is what drives everything that we do at AMP and what I do personally. At the same time, you can't let it affect you in your personal life. So you basically come into conversations just always like looking for the next thing. You're not like grateful for the present, the moment. I think you have to be able to be like, I'm grateful for this moment. It's fantastic, but we still have more to do. And you have to weigh both of those. And I think that's hard for a lot of people because like you could be like, I need more, but then you're miserable in conversations because you're not there yet.
Just if I could take a different angle, but the same topic. One of the things that I've struggled with is setting expectations too high. So there is this notion that I want to succeed and I'm going to continue to do so, and I'm always going to follow someone else to be able to try and get there. So your example of how you just actually retrospectively see what you've done to be able to actually just create a milestone of achievement is great, right? So it's like the list of things that I've done in the last 6 months is just phenomenal. What I end up doing is saying those list of there's 6 or 10 or 12 things I've done, so great, but actually I didn't achieve what I would have done in those things. So like, I don't know if it's cold calling or if it's sales or if it's whatever it may be, right? So one of the things that I also would encourage people that are leading businesses is just make sure that whatever you are going to achieve isn't something that's unrealistic. Because then you're always going to be behind the 8 ball and you're never going to feel fulfilled or accomplished in those, those milestones in 6-month intervals. Yeah.
No, I love that too. And that's great. I think everyone has to do these reflective or milestone periods to understand what to do, whether it's quarterly or yearly, to understand where they need to go.
Great. So how about you? Tell us about your business.
Let's go on the business. So context here is if you follow my content, a lot of it is around sales, mainly in the primary function of outbound and getting pipeline. However, when I first started creating content in 2016 on LinkedIn, I have seen in the past 8 years what content creation can do and how it creates brand awareness and also demand generation. So what AMP does is we creatively look at content and activate your subject matter experts and influencers to produce pipeline. And we do that through virtual events, masterclasses, video series. And we've been working with certain clients in the SaaS space, primarily to sales audiences, because that's my audience. And we're going from there. So it's a different way of going to market with outbound, but I believe outbound can be your cold calling and your cold email, but it also can be your content too. And that's what we're working on.
So here's an oxymoron here, if I'm honest, if that's the right terminology, both John and Morgan. I'm not an English major. I'm sure you'll notice that. I think call yourself more like an outbound sales kind of leader, but
Mhm.
actually you're more, if I look at your background, it's more content creation. And so, in my view, content creation is part of outbound, but it's
Yep.
not the only thing. But you're very focused on the outbound side now. So it'll be interesting to know, like, you came from the content creation side, but you bridged yourself into this, a person who can provide lots of information and guidance and was successful in the outbound sales space. So how did you do that successfully, and what were like the milestones to bridge that?
Yeah. So good call out there. Before I was in sales, before I created content on LinkedIn, I was doing Facebook videos, and they were in my car, and they were essentially just motivational videos. They were not even that crazy, to be honest. I just knew I needed to create content. I didn't know where to start. So I was like, I guess I'll just fire up a video and say stuff. So all I did was do motivational videos. It was around 2014, 2015
Okay.
on Facebook. Organic, back in the day, organic Facebook was crazy. So like
Yeah.
you could actually get a lot of reach there. And then also as well, I would take books that I was reading and I would give review. I would do reviews. So that was the content I started to create. And then I went from there. I did Periscope. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it was like a
Short-lived.
live, yeah, very short-lived. But it was a live streaming app. You could go on there, go live, and people could tune in. So that's how I got good at video. That's why I'm able to present on video. Like I just did a ton of videos to get myself comfortable where I can fire up a video and do my thing. And then I remember actually going to the National Speaker Association because I got into public speaking and I actually built a business on that. And they told me that I needed a topic to talk about. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to get to the next level. So that's why I decided to go into sales to learn sales, but also talk about it. And then that's why I created the content around outbound. But I've always been through and through fascinated with content for a very long time.
Yeah.
And because that's where I started. But I used the outbound sales to give advice to the audience. And now it's full circle where I have the outbound sales and the prospecting training experience, but I also know how to take that and make it into content that's applicable for people.
I want to do a little segue, actually. And thank you very much for that detail and answer.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. The reason I want to segue is like while you were talking about like just getting started creating video on Facebook and Periscope, what I was thinking is that like a lot of people that we have listening to this podcast are just small business owners. And what I really liked is like you just like kind of the get up and go attitude about, well, I'm just going to post stuff on Facebook and I'm going to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
Because I need to get something on there. So with that in mind, with small business owners in mind, what would you say would be your top tips for them if they wanted to start producing video for like LinkedIn, say, for instance, or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it. I think the number one thing that you need to do first and foremost is figure out who are you speaking to. And a lot of people have advice on this where it's like one avatar, one niche, one offer. That's how you could start. Everyone might be in different places. And it just really depends on where you're at, like, and what you're trying to do. But the first thing you need to figure out is who am I speaking to? What are their pain points? And then every single post at this point, as I've been tweaking and A/B testing a lot of stuff, I always ask myself, can someone take this post and get a result? I think about that every single time. So if I read it and like you really can't do anything with it, I probably won't post it. Now, if it's a personal story, a testimonial, that's a little bit different. I'm saying like your tactical educational content, what's going to gain you authority, which is like 80% of my content. I'm like, can someone take this immediately and go run with it? Also, as well, this advice typically makes people afraid, but I've been doing this for years and I haven't seen it backfire on me. Give everything away and just overvalue people. Like I tell people exactly here, this is exactly what I'm doing. Because people will be like, well, if that was free, like if I talk to him, like it's probably going to be better than that. Right.
Yeah.
The next thing that you need to do is figure out your channel. So you mentioned LinkedIn. I just encourage you to understand your audience is at. Look, I don't know, but they could be on Snapchat, they could be on Pinterest, they could be on YouTube. I don't know, but you just need to figure out what that is. Stick to one channel if you're starting to create. Don't do multiple. I still believe I started on LinkedIn, went all in, and now I could go to other platforms and I have content from that platform to go to other ones, right? And I think the other thing that you need to be able to do is figure out what is your consistency going to be. Like, are you going to do 2 to 3 posts a week, 1 post a week? You need to know that too, so that you can be consistent in the way that you go about that. So that's how I would start creating content on the channel. Know that this is a long-term play, but it is the best play that you'll be able to do.
Amazing. That's great insight. Thank you for that. When you started out with AMP, what sort of things did you like have challenges with? What sort of mistakes did you make, and what did you learn as you like built AMP up?
But before you get into that, I think it would be just interesting for the audience to know kind of where your business is at. You know, how big are you? If you don't want to provide numbers, that's okay. But like, you know, customer wise, you know, where are you in terms of regions? Just be interesting to know.
For sure. So let's talk about my failures. So the thing is like it's actually very, very interesting to me. You know, I worked at JB Sills, so John Barrows. I worked with him for 3.5, 4 years, and he always told me when I could go off my own, it'd be different than what I'm doing right now. And everyone always told me that being a founder or being a CEO is just you don't get it until you're in it. And about 3 months in, I was like, "Oh, okay, I understand." I was like, this is what this means. All right, cool. It's hard to explain. So I think number one is I should have gone to in market first. So let me explain what that means. So one of my mentors, her name is Jill Rowley. She's been at Eloqua, Marketo, all these different things. She's very good at social selling, very knowledgeable in the go-to-market space. She, after I told her a couple things about 6 months down the line when we reconnected, she was like, you have to focus on being in market so you can go to market. And what in market means is going and speaking to people who could be your potential customers and giving them a hypothesis of what you believe to be true on what you're building. If you just say, hey, this is what I'm building, it's gonna be great, like follow me, you need to give people a hypothesis of like, this is what I believe to be true based on what I think is true, but like, let me know if I'm off. And so about 4 to 5 months in, I thought I had the greatest idea ever, and it wasn't. And then so then I was like, what's wrong? And I was like really pressed about it. Like, just be transparent, like the beginning of 2023, it's like when everybody like the layoffs started happening. Like I had a pipeline of like 500,000, and I started the business like 2 months ago, 2 months in. So like it's pretty good, right? Well, yeah, all that went away when people started cutting budgets and stuff like that. So I was just like, I was like, because I was like, all right, like we're about to kill it. Like this year's about to be lit. And then like all of that just like went in 1 week. And I was like, okay, like what do we do here? And so, you know, I made the adjustments. It was fine, but I just like to tell people like I'm just very like transparent with the journey. Like it's not like, oh, we're out here killing it. Like there are times where I was like, okay, I don't really know if this is for me. Where do I gotta go? But the thing is that I went in market. So I went and talked to all the marketing leaders because we sell to marketing leaders for influencer programs. And then we talked to the revenue leaders as well, but it's mainly the marketer that has the budget. So I had a weekly call with 4 marketers for 9 weeks. And I was like, here's our hypothesis. Here's what we're doing. What's feedback? And so after having those calls, we found out that people were like, you should do B2B influencer marketing. You should still talk about outbound as a sales function because that's your content. You don't want to deviate too hard because you have the sales audience. You can't get influencer deals if you don't have a sales audience. You got to showcase that you can speak to that audience. But they were like, you should talk about influencer marketing more. And these are the services you should provide. You should get this. And ever since we did that, the company has grown and we have seen success and we're less stressed out. So I think ultimately that was it. I think number 2, asking for help sooner. I thought that the solopreneur route was going to be for me. I thought, okay, it's just me. I got it. I now that we have a team and we're going to talk about where we're at now, it's fundamentally changed everything. I feel way less stressed. I feel way more calm. I have way more trust in what they're doing. They have skill sets that I don't have, and they have gotten the respect from people in this industry. And I'm not even in the room half the time. So it just shows
like a theme that has emerged in the last 3 episodes of the podcast as well, like entrepreneurs that like struggle like to let go, you know, of everything. And why was it hard for you?
For me, it's because, and not to say that I'm a solo act, I think for most of the things that I've done, I figured it out. Again, goes back to curiosity. I figured it out from by myself, and I was able to move forward because I know I can 100% believe in what I'm going to. If I say I'm going to do, I'm going to do it. Right? Let's go. I think it was hard for me to say, can I find other people that want to run this race with me at the speed that I want to go?
Yeah.
And I think I just told myself a story that I don't think anyone else could run this speed. And I have been infinitely wrong. Like I have found people who can run the speed even faster than me to a certain degree.
Even Oriana needs people in a team, man.
Right, exactly. No, fair play. That's the thing. Like I had to, had to go back to the game, right? But I told myself a lie, man. I thought that was it. I was like, I got it, and I think that was an obstacle, and I was wrong. And it's cool because I will tell the team, like someone on the team, was like, "Hey, can you do this?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm already on it." I'm like, "Oh, great." I'm like,
Amazing.
"Hey, can you go and do this?" They're like, "Yeah, we already had that conversation." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, great." So I'm like, okay, so like all my hesitancies have been basically quelled, and we're good. I'll give a last one, and then we'll talk about where we're at today. So this one has been massive for me is I realized, and me and my coach work on this a lot. Every CEO has a different function they play. So some people are very technical founders, visionary, right, et cetera. As most people probably can tell, I'm a visionary. And I go like in 2050. So like, hey guys, in 2050, this is what we're doing. And like, but it's like, wait, like, what are we doing today?
Yeah, people are like, what the fuck?
So yeah, I'll like be talking to someone on our team, and they're like, "Yeah, that's a lot, Morgan. Like, I like, what are we supposed to do tomorrow?" I was like, I'm like, my bad. So now what I do is I'm dumping everything in my head and distilling it to the team so they understand what's happening. So now I work on writing everything out, or I do voice tapping in a Google Doc. I get ChatGPT to clean it up, and then basically I'll do AI to then create like a virtual whiteboard and visuals. So people say like, "Hey, oh, this is the roadmap. This is where we're going." Most people probably listening in have probably seen a Marvel movie. So the way that Feige does his Marvel movies is he does them in phases. So he'll be like, "Here's our 5-year phases." So I do the same thing with the team. I say, "Hey, y'all, here's our like phase for the next like year. This is like what we're gonna do, and this is what I'm hoping to accomplish and what we feel." So now they are seeing it. And even we had our offsite December, and people are already seeing like what we're doing in this next 6 months. Like these are, we called shots and we're making them, and it's fantastic. So that is probably a big thing for me. It's like, because in my own head, when you work with yourself, you're like, yeah, I get it. But then you realize other people don't get it because you're not sharing what's happening.
Yeah.
They can't read your mind. So
I just wanted to come back, and I know that you're going to talk about where you're at now, but I'd be really interested. I think a lot of business leaders don't do this, and you keep on talking about this throughout this time. So as a small business owner who is doesn't have investors, who's trying to do that themselves, they're bootstrapping their way through this process. You keep on reminding us that you speak to a coach, you speak into a mentor, you're speaking to people outside of your current environment to be able to continue to get guidance, to keep mentally strong. And maybe you can just give us a little bit of a summary on that, because I think that's important for business leaders to actually ask for that help. And we don't really see the value because we're so much into the actual operational side.
100%.
Yeah. So how's that helped you?
Oh, yeah. I've invested more into coaching and help than I ever have in the past 6 months. Like I'm like all in. Like I'm to the point where like a lot of the profit from the business, or even like the own things that I take home, like I don't really spend it on anything else besides how do I get better and grow. Like it's like
Wow.
great, it's that much for coaching, great. I actually don't really care. Like I'll spend it because the thing is, if it's not an egregious amount, I'll do it because it's investing in myself. I know I'll do something, and the ROI on average is like I think 7 to 10x if you actually execute on the information. Then there's studies on this. So I'm like, okay, well, if I believe in myself, the average is 7 to 10. I should be able to do above average.
Yeah, more than that.
Right. I should get more than that.
Yeah.
And I was watching a video the other night, and I'm trying to figure out, oh, Dickie Bush. He does Ship It for 30. He's got like 300,000 followers on Twitter. I was watching a YouTube interview with him with Ali Abdul, and he was talking about how everything that you do, you should aim to be the best student. So if you invest into something, it's like, I need to be the best student of this resource. And so that's how I think about everything. So it's like, if I invest into something, like I'm going to be the best student you've ever had. That means that I'll be more successful as a byproduct. So to give you I'll give you a breakdown of what I invest into. So I have a performance coach, and the reason I got her, we've been working together for, actually almost a year now. Year will be next month. So the reason for that is because I felt stuck, and I can't tell people I work with, hey guys, I'm stuck. My mom and dad are just, they're great, but they're not, they're going to be mom and dad. And then like my close friends don't get it, right? Because they're not like in it like I am, right? So I was like, I need someone who's worked with other people that have been successful, high performers, and like get me unstuck. And she absolutely did that. And she's been fantastic, and she's a good soundboard, but she also helps me be like, where are we going? Where are we focused on? I also have like a a fitness coach. So I believe if you're going to work at this high level, you need to be working out. So he helps me with just what I should be eating, how I should be focusing if I'm traveling, don't eat this, do this, etc. And then I get coaching for certain things. So I've been getting coaching for like writing. I wanted to get better at writing. So I've got like a lot of copywriting coaches, formatting, style, etc. I got an acting coach because I wanted to have my voice be better when I speak so I can modulate accordingly. And then I invested into actually a CEO group here in Arizona where I'm at now. So I'm going to connect with him actually later today. So all these things are important to invest because ultimately it'll help you perform at the level you need to be performing at.
You're in a culture of constantly iterating and learning, and like you're committed to like building the best version of yourself. Fundamentally, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So Morgan, where are you at? So you said started in 23, like where are you at now? Yeah.
Yeah. So right now we have 4, well, including me, we have 4 people full time. And we have contractors on for like if we do like bigger projects, design. We have a partnerships person as well as part of that. And then we have some good, I'd say, mid-market enterprise clients. I think the most notable we have is like Calendly. So Calendly is one of our bigger clients that we work with. So that's been going really well. At the end of this year, we definitely will be at the 7-figure mark for sure. We've already like paced that in terms of revenue as in total, but we're looking to pace that in terms of MRR. So we're actually pacing pretty well there. And yeah, like we're in a really good spot. We have a lot of momentum and a lot of partnerships and people that we're working with. And I'm excited to see, where we go from there. But right now we're in the system and operations phase so that we can make sure that we can scale without me being involved. That's the biggest bottleneck is me because everything is creative or content. So I'm there. So we're working on like, how do we like get out of that, which we're doing well and we're getting there, but that's where we're at right now.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That's really
absolutely.
I'm conscious we are out of time there, John. I don't know. Do we have any specific closing questions?
I have one, really 2 actually, to be selfish. The first one's actually the really important one. Future of prospecting. I'd be really interested to hear more about that. So there's a lot of really interesting tools.
Outbound is dead.
That's all I've been seeing on your profile when I've been looking on LinkedIn. In a sarcastic, ironic kind of way.
So I'll be transparent with this one. So this is actually, I was talking to a friend about this last night. And I fell into this own trap myself. And now I'm like looking at things from a different lens. So I've been saying, I said it when I first was doing the content, because I was like, content is the future. I'm telling people right now, if you take the time, the next 6 months, I'm telling you what I'm doing right now, just like so you can see what happens in 6 months. I'm spending all of my money, investing all my coaching into how to get better at content. Is like the only thing that I care about. Because content is effectively the new oil. So if you understand how to get attention and create content, you could start any company to do anything that you want at any time. You never have to worry about anything if you know how to do it well. So that's why I'm investing into it. The reason I'm saying all that is like, I was so bullish on that I said, well, everything else is just going to die. So I was so locked in. I was saying outbound is dying. You got to focus on content. And I don't think I actually was saying the message right. The message is that traditional ways of doing outbound, yes, that is dying. You can't just load up 1,000 contacts and blast them out and do a spam cannon. That there was companies have grown to 100 million ARR, by the way, by doing this. So this isn't like, like people have done this and grown massive companies. You just can't do that now. So what my take is, look, your traditional ways dying. The way we're doing it now, you have to be hyper focused on outbound is evolving. Think of it in a positive mindset. And how it's evolving is, you said the technology, intent-based outbound, right? So that's checking out a product here soon, Common Room, right? All the data tools out there. I'm gonna call it like a Cognism. Are you using different things like a Airbnb retention to see who's coming to your website? There's all these different things that are out there that you now can use as intent-based. But in order to get intent, you have to create content. So you have to put content out there on the platform that your avatars are on. And then the third piece is you still need to have tailored outbound. Like if someone does come to your site and they don't raise their hand, are you just going to sit there and wait till they raise their hand? No, you're going to reach out. So that's why you need to know how to do videos and tailored emails still. So it's the 3 functions of intent-based platform. You also need as well to focus on what tools there. And then also you need to make sure that my site is doing well, et cetera. I'm creating good content and I'm doing tailored outbound. That is the future of it. It's evolving. And the people that are saying like it's dead or dying, transparently, at this point, we could have an argument about it live. They just aren't willing to grow. It's easier to call something dead, and because now you don't have to do anything.
Instead of adapting or evolving, just like consumer behavior has like adapted and evolved, like by the way, because you know, people do not go into a car sales room moving away from B2B and expect a sales rep to sell them a car. They already know what car they want to buy. Right, it's just about like facilitating the transaction in the best possible way. Do you have any more questions, Steve? I have one more. It's a selfish one though.
No, I just want to say that I had a really thoroughly good time talking to you today, Morgan. So thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really good. John, over to you.
Greatest game of all time.
Greatest game of all time?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go Halo 2.
Wow.
So here's the thing. Fun fact. I was like semi-pro Halo 2. It was the first time where I like really invested into something and saw the return. And that's actually where I learned like teamwork when I played basketball, because like you headset, communicate, etc. So there's a lot of communication there. You had to like be like there was so much there. So yeah, I'd say that.
So that's really interesting, because one theme we've picked up on these podcasts, like in the last few episodes, is like how people with professional sports backgrounds, right, translate well into the professional world. Do you think that people like in the esports scene, right, you know, who play competitive games, do you think that would be the skills of the future, right? You know, like because there's a great deal of collaboration for things like Valorant, you know, Rainbow Six Siege, things like that.
Yeah, I'm playing like Helldivers 2 right now. I think all those things.
Game.
Yeah, we can, John. We can play it. Look, don't get me talking about that game. But I think ultimately of the day, it's like that's what it is, right? It's these components of sport, games, whatever you did. There's a teamwork aspect, and I find that the people that do those have success in the long term.
Amazing.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Listen, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. We've got an outro sorted, so we don't need to do anything about that. So we'll just stop recording.
Cool. Perfect.